Hey everyone, Ryan Young here. I thought it'd be a good time to do a video on our goals. And these are goals that we want to have for Jiu-Jitsu, but it can also be for life, right? So, back to the old whiteboard, right? So, and I found that this is actually helpful. Now, for those of you who run schools, it's actually helpful to have one of these on your training floor. In fact, we have one upstairs on the training floor there. It's good to because some people don't learn just from me telling things. It helps when I write things down. So now with regard to our training, we need to have goals that are short term, medium term, and long term. Okay? Now excuse me if you see me looking down, I'm kind of looking at a monitor that I have that allows me to see what I'm doing. But for Jiu-Jitsu, an example for you lower belts that might have these kind of questions, an example of a short-term goal might be your techniques. Okay? Learning your techniques. This could be choking somebody, it could be putting an arm bar on, it could be anything, foot lock, heel hook, however you want to do it. Whatever your instructor or your professor teaches you, work on these techniques. Now, here's the problem. Most people, they think Jiu-Jitsu is just techniques, and it's not. If you were to just learn techniques, then you'd know a whole bunch of techniques, but you'd still be no good. Because if the opportunity doesn't present itself, then you really wouldn't be able to do anything. You'd just be smashed. So what you need to do is you need to look at your medium-term goals. Your medium-term goals would be things like mastering your positions, right? Positions from where you can get to execute your techniques, or transitions. Now, the transitions tie your positions together. You have techniques, positions, transitions between positions. So today you're learning a particular armbar, but you need to know how to do them from the guard, from the mount, whatever position you want to. Those are positions. But in order to be able to do them from the positions, you need to be able to hold the position. If you can't hold the position, you can't expect to ever do the technique. And if you can't transition between positions, you're not going to be able to do anything anyway, because you'll be stuck in a position and you don't know how to escape it, or you get to a position that you work really hard to earn and then you lose it. So the transitions get you between positions. Your long term would be your overall game. Now, back in that video, the secret formula for success in Jiu-Jitsu, right? The G stood for game. So your overall game is equal to your T plus your P, your technical ability plus your physicality. But if you break Jiu-Jitsu up into little bite-sized pieces like this, makes it a whole lot easier. So you could walk into class and say, today I'm going to work on choking people from the guard. I'm also going to work on being able to keep the guard, not let people to pass my guard. And while I'm playing guard, let's say I do get mounted, then I have to learn how to transition to get back to guard, so I can then do the choke, right? See how your short and your midterms are starting to come together? And over time, you're thinking that's how you're going to better yourself. Do not think in terms of short term would be your blue belt, middle term would be your purple belt, your long term obviously is a black belt. Okay? Do not think in those terms, right? So, no, no, no. A belt is not a goal. A belt is just a verification, or I can't think of the word right now, but you're basically, it's validation for efforts that you've done up here. Okay? So as an example, if you have a belt as your goal, a blue belt will take you a while, from 1 to 3 years, depending on your school, depending on how often you can get to come to class, how often or how well you can get a command of what you need to get a command of to earn your blue belt. And if your goal is only the belt, once you get the blue, then you'll be like a lot of people that quit at blue, because they were only thinking of the blue and they thought, man, this is harder than I thought it would be. So they made their goal earning the blue belt with their long-term plan to earn a black belt, but it was so long and arduous to get to the blue belt, they say, man, if it's going to take this long, everybody tells me the purple takes even longer, which it typically does. So that's where people are they're not putting their goals correctly. They're not looking at them in the correct perspective. If you do these and you do these, then you concentrate here, you will progress through. No doubt about it. So don't even think belt, like I mentioned earlier. Think only your goals. Now, what are some goals that you can have? And this stuff kind of just goes for life in general. But I know that a lot of you have schools. And let's say you have a dream of running a school. Maybe that's your goal, to run a jiu-jitsu school. You need to set up goals for yourself in attaining that goal. So it depends where you are. So let's say you're not a black belt. Let's say you're blue, purple, brown belt, or whatever. Your short-term skill or short-term goal needs to be to acquire skill. Right? Your medium-term goal is to, this is just plain jiu-jitsu skills. Your medium-term goal would be to acquire skills that have to do with teaching. Okay. Because in the end, your long-term goal is to run a school. Does that make sense? So let's say you're already a black belt. You've already got the skills. Okay. So now that you've got a black belt, are you a professor? Right? You're not a professor just because people call you professor. Not at least in the Elliot Gracie sense of the word. Because to be a professor means that you not only acquired skills to train in jiu-jitsu, you also acquired teaching skills through your training program. So if you're a black belt and you haven't gone through a teaching program, you need to go through a teaching program. Find a professor that you like, who has the teaching style that you like and you think is effective, and learn to teach from them. And then your long-term goal would be to have a school. But that's another way to set it up. Now, what if you're already a professor? You've been at a school, you acquired your skills, you ran through the teaching program. Then your short-term goal would be to set up a school. Then you'd have different types of goals like profitability, membership, membership goals, profitability goals, and all of that. That works out to your long-term goals. But if you're still in this phase, let's say you're a blue or purple belt. Why are you even, a lot of people, there are a lot of people that have schools that are at this level. I never understood why. I was offered several opportunities while I was a purple belt to run a school, and every single time I turned them down. It sounds great. It's like, yeah, I'd love to teach jiu-jitsu, but I'd always ask myself, do I know as much as Hickson, Horian, Helson? Am I so good that I can use that time that I would be having to spend teaching people? Am I so good that I can take time away from learning, acquiring skills, to running a school? And the answer was always no. In fact, I never had any intention on opening a school. This was never my long-term goal. My goal was always here. But over the course of time, I developed these, right? And then it became this. It was totally unintentional, but it happened. And now I'm in it, so now I'm doing it. But when I opened this school, I had already acquired these. And it's evident to me when I go to other places and I visit, a lot of people, they run schools because they just love the art. I don't want to ever say that people are doing it for the money, because there's so many different ways to make money. Jiu-jitsu, it can be pretty lucrative for people, but as a whole, people don't make a ton of money running schools. So it usually is not the money that's driving people. But they just want to open a school because they're so passionate about jiu-jitsu, they want to share. Well, if you haven't acquired skills that take you up to a black belt level, right? You're white, you're blue, you're purple, and then you got brown. You know, let's say you're kind of in this area here. You still don't have the skills necessary to be able to teach, to run a school. My personal judgment. But, you know, I'm not that important. So, you know, take it for what it's worth. You know, it's even worth a penny. But that's just, to me, you know, when I was in this area, I was offered to run schools. Once I got to brown, I was at Kama. And at that point, I had no designs on running a school because in my opinion, based on training with Dave, I was so far behind. I think I still am. I've said on many videos that I've learned more as a black belt than I did from white to black. But my skills are pretty good in teaching. So then it makes sense that I would run a school. But, you know, with a school, especially when you run a school, you have to have these set up because you no longer have time, or at least as much time, to acquire skills as you did when you didn't run a school. So anyway, short, medium term, long term. Think in those terms for everything. I gave you 2 examples, you know, for somebody who wants to get good in jiu-jitsu and for somebody who wants to run a school or who has designs on running a school at some point in the future, or if you already are. If you think in those terms, what will happen is everything will become manageable. And that's really the goal of goal setting like this. And, you know, one of the reasons why many people don't ever earn their black belt is because they don't ever learn how to set goals. You know, and I've said this before as well. Master Hickson was once asked, Grandmaster Hickson was once asked, how does the average person receive a black belt? And his answer was the average person will never receive a black belt in jiu-jitsu because the average person doesn't know how to set their goals. They don't know how to set their priorities. They don't know what to target on. Whereas over time, somebody who's had a great mentor will learn how to do those, how to know how to set those goals, know how to target. Keep your eye on the prize, for instance, right? If your goal is to run a school, you need to acquire those skills. You need to acquire skills in jiu-jitsu, skills in teaching, and then you run your school. Otherwise, you won't be turning out a good product, right? There's a lot of mediocre jiu-jitsu going around, and I'm not saying I'm the gold standard, but there are a lot of people who turn out students who don't know the basics of jiu-jitsu. And their idea of basics is something completely different from what the true fundamentals are. But that's what they see as the basics. And, you know, it just took away time. You know, they jumped to the long-term goal prior to getting the short-term goals under. Anyway, that's all I got. I hope it helps you. And just remember that jiu-jitsu is a long-term journey. And you need to have short, medium, and long-term goals to make things doable, right? You can also check out a video that I did called "How to Eat an Elephant," which is actually a pretty good analogy with regard to this. So anyway, that's all I got. Take care. Have a great rest of your weekend.